to leave. He said that they would never leave our country unless we killed them and drove them back to hell. Allah wills it, he said, and we must do Allah's will. Tomorrow you will see. The next morning after breakfast, they took me into the city. We walked and walked until it was noon. At a big house, my father went down the stairs. He knocked on the door. A small window in the door slid open and then closed. There was a turning of locks and the door opened. The room was dark and musty. Only a few light bulbs dimly lit the room. I could make out some of the faces of the men who greeted us. As my eyes got used to the gloom, I saw men unloading boxes. They pulled out guns. My father picked one up and knelt before me. This is the tool that will drive out the infidels. This is your sword that may strike down the demons to defend our home. He smiled at me and offered it. I held it, but it did not make me more confident. Father, I said, I don't know if I will be able to kill the Americans. Don't worry, he said, you will. We sat there for what felt like a lifetime. We wrapped cloths around our heads and made masks. A door opened from the top of the stairwell, and everyone began to move. We followed the stairs all the way up and traveled along the rooftops until we reached a place with a busy street below. Fear gripped my stomach. I wanted to scream, "Get away!" but I couldn't. I felt like a stone. Then I heard the growl of the Humvees. The streets seemed to empty, as if people knew what was going to happen. 2 Humvees began to move down the street with a dozen Americans on either side. A man with an RPG aimed at the Humvee. An American yelled, and chaos filled the street. The American soldier aimed and shot the man with the RPG. I watched as the man fell, scarlet blood spewing out of his body. Another RPG was fired, hitting one of the Humvees. The explosion rocked the street, but the truck seemed unharmed. Azad was standing now, shooting at the soldiers. I looked toward them and raised the gun to my shoulder. One was dragging his comrade into an alley. Then I saw one alone, standing against the wall under an overlapping roof, aiming with a grim expression on his face. I put the man in my sights. My hands trembled, and I couldn't keep my aim. I don't need to do this, I thought. This isn't right. Tears crept down my face. The American spoiler dropped to one knee and reloaded. He stopped and looked up right into my eyes. I felt his eyes scanning me, and I felt so naked. Time seemed to slow and stop. The yells and gunshots seemed to disappear until there was only silence. My hands stopped shaking. The tears slowed. Then I whispered, "I'm sorry." I pulled the trigger. The bark and the kick of the gun brought me back to the real world. I unloaded my gun at the man. I saw him hit the wall he was standing in front of. He stood against it and slipped into a sitting position. A red smear seemed to paint the wall, even after the gun was empty. I continued to pull the trigger. I fell to my knees and began to cry. I heard someone yell, "Back! Back to the safe house!" I grabbed my gun, turned, still crying, and ran with the group. I jumped and weaved around the rooftops. I still cried. If God wanted me to kill these men, why did it seem that my soul died with them?
That was very impressive. Wow. I'm not even going to ask how you got the research on that one. Hey, guys. Hey.